All right, welcome on in to another episode of Center Stage with Eric Wood. I'm Josh Reed. Eric, it seems like that Chiefs win was about 2 months ago at this point. You look at what happened in that Dolphins game, and it's like I said, it seems like a long, long time ago since everybody was on that hype train of the Bills have figured it out and they're back. Outside of the facility, everybody's riding the wave, but you get inside there, you won't be surprised by this. They're all just kind of business as usual.
Yeah, I saw some comments from Josh, from Dion, from Sean this week, and it's, just focus on this game. Put that one behind you. Learn from it, obviously, but you got to put it behind you. It's a week-to-week league, and we saw that last week. The Dolphins came out and played better than us. Guys talked about how they wanted it more, and it's hard to believe with what's on the line for us and seemingly lack of what's on the line for them, but GM gets fired down in Miami. They come out with their hair on fire. They had a good game plan. They had a little extra time to prepare for the Bills, and Bills have owned them. And I'm sure the messaging was, let's go pay them back for what they've done to us so many times. But like you said, it feels like a month ago, based upon the fact that you get out of the Kansas City game and we're number one in the power rankings. Josh is the favorite for MVP. We're number one in Super Bowl odds, and then you blow one against the Dolphins. You continue to get dinged up, and now we're sitting where we are, which is 6-3, which isn't out of it by any means. But I think a lot of the panic and a lot of the frustration comes with how well the Patriots are doing this year.
Yeah, no doubt. There's definitely people are kind of, one eye is focused on the Bills while the other eye is kind of watching over in the corner and seeing what the Patriots have been able to do and, racking up wins and continuing to kind of pad their lead in the division. We're going to talk about the passing game again. I mean, here we go. It's wild to believe that, with this offense coming into the season, that would be such a huge storyline. I'm not saying that we didn't think that maybe there'd be some ups and downs, maybe some rough spots, but it continues to struggle, Eric. And where are you with the pass game? I mean, what's the solution? It doesn't seem like there's any sort of magic pill.
No, there's no magic pill. And, the trade deadline went by and we didn't pick up anybody. And who knows how much that changes. We saw Amari Cooper come in last year, made a few plays, but didn't dynamically change the passing game. I think Josh Palmer coming back helps. He's first year in Buffalo. He seemed to be getting more on the same page with Josh early on in the Atlanta game before he got injured. He seemed to be the feature receiver for this offense. And so we'll see if he can come back and make a difference. We may see a little Gabe Davis. So we got word this week that he's been getting some first team reps. So we'll see if they bring him up and see if he can make a difference out there as well. But, to me, it's kind of the same thing. It just looks a little disjointed where at times Josh passes on an open receiver early and then can't find anybody late. And there's lack of separation at times. At times it's Josh went in with inaccurate throws. Keon had a couple opportunities deep down the field last week, and Josh was off on those throws. Now, we don't know if Keon was maybe supposed to be in a different spot or what, but those balls could have made a difference in the game and gave us a different feeling about this passing game if you're able to connect on those.
You mentioned Keon Coleman. I mean, he's been a hot topic amongst Bills fans. I haven't seen enough on a consistent basis. And we hear that word consistency come up with him all of the time and needing to be consistent, not only in games, but in practices. How big of a concern is this for you?
I mean, it's a concern because we needed him to develop into, not necessarily the big time number one receiver, but just a reliable target on a week to week basis. And it just doesn't seem like we can rely on him consistently enough to be, a focal point in this offense to where you want to target him over a Palmer, Shakir, Kincaid, who's now going to be out for this game. And so, to me, the Bills knew that there was going to need to be some development with Keon Coleman when he came into the NFL, and we just have not seen it to this point now, there's times where he can make plays that wow you. He had a touchdown catch last week where you're thinking, if he could do that, not every time, just on a more consistent basis, twice a game, that opens up the rest of the offense. But teams don't seem to fear him on the outside right now, and because of that, it can tighten everything else out.
Speaking of consistent, the one guy who has been consistent, you just mentioned him, tight end Dalton Kincaid. He's dinged up. Looks like, he's going to be out. Hasn't practiced this week. Probably going to be out for a little while. How do you replace that production? Is it a matter of a player, or is it a matter of tweaking some formations in the system a little bit to now help everybody else get involved, if you will?
Yeah, this is why you're happy you have a Dawson Knox on the roster. And I'm not saying Dawson is the receiver that Dalton Kincaid is, but he's a plenty capable receiver in this league. Now, we may see less heavy personnel usage where we could get Kincaid matched up on a linebacker or safety. You're not necessarily going to attack those matchups with Knox that you maybe would with Kincaid. And so, what replaces those targets? Maybe passes to running backs. The Bucs are worse than the NFL in yards per pass to running backs. Take that how you will. The Bucs blitz a lot. When you blitz a lot of times you get those dump downs to the back. Maybe, the Bucs think he's going to stay in to protect. He releases. It could be a reason for the running backs having success in the pass game against them. But getting those guys involved when there's going to be more targets available without Kincaid could be a factor. Then I'd like to see them lean into a little bit of 11 personnel in this game, just with Kincaid out, get more wide receivers on the field, maybe some RPO stuff that we saw in the past from this Bills offense could also help give this passing game a boost.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad that you went there. I'm glad that that's your opinion on this, because I want you to talk me down and tell me that I'm crazy for thinking this. To me, I think the fix of the Bills offense is in 2025, it's built for the offensive line and James Cook. The receivers have not helped Josh at all. Dalton Kincaid's hurt. So my thought was just lean all the way into the run game. And it sounds bizarre, a bizarro world, because you have the MVP at quarterback, and that's almost, you're kind of taking the ball to the hands of the best player in the NFL. The dude was the MVP. How could you possibly do that? But in 2025, this roster, to me, that might be the only way for them to get on track. But I like what you're saying. Spread it out, right? Am I crazy to think that you need to just lean all the way into the run?
No, I mean, the strength of this offense is the run game. Now, when you get in the shotgun, you got to account for Josh as well. And I'm not saying we should lean all the way into that. It's a variety. And to me, I also think that you can create some easier targets for Josh when you get in the up-tempo offense. I know we've had a banged-up defense throughout the season. We came into the season dinged up and suspended as far as the defense goes. So you don't necessarily want to run a ton of up-tempo, because you think, okay, if we can limit possessions, our offense is going to be more efficient and we'll be able to, keep our defense fresher and all of that. But, it's, if we saw last week against the Dolphins, we saw in the second half or the fourth quarter against the Ravens, when this offense goes up tempo and you simplify some of those looks in the secondary because the play calls can't come in, then we've gotten some good looks. So mixing in and out of different tempos, I think, could help this passing game as well. And then whether it's Shakir, Elijah Moore, Samuel, someone's got to be the 2nd and 9 guy that runs an option route, that runs a slant, that gets you 5 to 7 yards to put you in 3rd and short. And we're just not getting those quick hitters on a consistent enough basis. Those have become screens, and those weren't successful against the Dolphins. They've been successful against most teams this year, but they weren't against the Dolphins, so we couldn't get that going. And so to me, it's a variety of things. They're not sitting there, this week saying, well, the passing game's not efficient right now, so let's abandon it. It's let's look for some answers. And one of those could be Gabe Davis, maybe taking some reps away from Keon Coleman. It could be Elijah Moore, Shakir, or Curtis Samuel on some just quicker routes to be able to take advantage of some of the middle of the field targets.
Before we get over to the defensive side, I want to slip a special teams question in here because I think that's why Mecole Hardman was brought in particular as a return guy, because he even said it himself Wednesday. That's his bread and butter. And I don't know how quickly he's going to get, caught up on this playbook and everything, and they're going to be able to mesh him in with everything. But when you heard that the Bills were going to sign him, a veteran guy who's won a couple of Super Bowls, made plays on the biggest stage, in fact, has made plays against the Bills in the postseason. What were your thoughts on that signing?
Well, my original thought was Bills fans are going to be up in arms because we didn't bring in anyone at the trade deadline, and then we signed him right afterwards. Like, oh, Bean had that in his back pocket. Well, Bean was trying to make moves, and that's evident. We got that information over the weekend. But Mecole Hardman, to me, this day and age where you can sign these veterans to the practice squad, give them a look. Yeah, I think it's worth a shot here and see if he can integrate himself into the return game. Maybe be able to stretch the field with his speed. Sean talked about this week that his speed is still there. You could see it, in practice. They obviously worked him out before they signed him. The Bills right now have the second worst average field position, start position in the NFL. That's special teams. It's in kind of our lack of explosive returns. And then the other side of that is, defenses aren't getting a ton of 3-and-outs and all that. So all that being said, if you could find a veteran that has experience that you can rely on in big moments, take a flyer on them for sure.
I know. I thought it was interesting how, and he used the word excited, Sean McDermott was when asked about Hardman, in his press conference Wednesday. He was a little more it almost was like he was asked about it, and he kind of like sat up a little bit and was like, I'm kind of interested to see what he can provide. That's kind of interesting from Sean McDermott, who's usually pretty kind of level.
Yeah, it is, because Sean doesn't usually give answers like that, especially when referring to someone who was signed to the practice squad. But to me, that's a defensive coach that's prepared against Mecole Hardman a number of times. So he's probably thinking, okay, well, if we can utilize him in some of the similar ways that the Chiefs did, or when we were prepping for him in the return game, let's see what he's got.
Other side of the ball, defense now. Shaq Thompson missed a couple of games. He's been dinged up. When he was healthy and on the field, he was making plays. In fact, he's been their best linebacker all season long, in my opinion, and he's made not only plays, but he's made some splash plays, some tackles for loss. He just seems to, kind of be around the ball, when you want your linebacker to be there to make a play. How is that going to look? If he is ready to go on Sunday with the struggles that the linebacking core has had this year, I still think Terrell Bernard's playing through something right now. I really do. Just that fall off seems bizarre to me. And Matt Milano's kind of been okay. How do they fit him into this lineup? Because, look, if the idea is to play your best 11, he definitely fits that role.
Yeah, and they'll get him out there in some sense, I would imagine, whether that's a starting role, whether that's platooning with somebody, whether that's bringing him in situationally, where we've had the platoon system at safety. Wouldn't surprise me to see him starting out there, or if he's not starting, to see him out there on the field, whether that's in base defense, where they bring him a dime, whatever that looks like. That guy needs to be on the field. Like you said, he's been our most consistent linebacker throughout the season.
Unlike the offense, where, there's no magic pill, the defense actually has some guys who are starting to get healthy and starting to return. So I think if you ask most people, the offense is the bigger concern than the defense. But TJ Sanders is another guy who looks like he's going to be ready to go on Sunday. So you're getting him back on a defensive line that's really banged up. Ed Oliver, I think they've still got their fingers crossed that, as they get closer to the postseason and maybe even into the playoffs, that he's back in the lineup. And the other thing is the growth of these young guys. Eric, Max Hairston, man. That dude, I know he got beat for his first touchdown against Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle's done that to a lot of cornerbacks in his career. But he bounced back, man. Bounced back, had the interception. Quite frankly, probably has the interception that Cole Bishop ends up with if Bishop's not there to take it. You know, I know it's a short sample size, just 3 games, but what's your takeaway from Max?
He's showing why we drafted him. We drafted him because last year in the playoffs we couldn't keep up with Kansas City's receivers. So you go and draft a guy with 4.2, 4.3 speed to be able to run with those guys. And yeah, he got beat over the top, and that's going to happen. You want him to take those lumps right now. You don't want to lose a game to Miami, but you want him to have these lessons learned at this point of the season and not in the postseason. And I'm loving the fact that he gets the start, gets the full game last week against the Dolphins, and I'm loving what I'm seeing from him. And you talk about the growth from the young guys. Cole Bishop is playing better and better each week. Just seems to be playing extremely confident out there. I mean, to the point where he goes up on the line of scrimmage, taps Joey Bosa on his left cheek. He spikes under. He gets a tackle for loss because he knows there's no one else to block on the outside. So now the tackle's got to come out to me, and you could smoke the guard based upon leverage in the B gap, and he makes a tackle for loss. And Cole Bishop's up at the line of scrimmage communicating that. So to me, I'm loving what I'm seeing from Cole Bishop. Get these reps for guys like TJ Sanders. Get him those reps now. Deion Walker continues to make splash plays. Down in and down out, he's got to get more consistent, especially in the run game. But, those young guys, this is the first time we've had a defense where we've said, man, these guys are going to keep getting better and better just with the youth resurgence we've had on that side of the ball. And you talk about concerns between offense and defense. We have bigger concerns about the offense because this should be one of the top scoring offenses in the NFL with Josh Allen. If you said which side of the ball is the strength, you'd probably still say the offense when you consider, what they've done this season. But this defense seems to be getting better and better with this platoon system and everything they got working on the back end. Don getting everyone involved. Hopefully you get Taryn back this week, but Cam Lewis has played some good football these last couple of weeks. You're encouraged by what you're getting from this defense right now. And then, you sign Joey Bosa in the offseason and everyone says, well, he's been hurt. He's this and that. Is he too old? He's been a difference maker out there as well.
This week, a Tampa Bay reporter asked Baker Mayfield about Josh. I'm sure you probably have seen it floating around now. And he kind of joked that, he needs a walkie-talkie because he's so tall in order to talk to him. And then he joked that his hands are small, though, so he needs gloves to play in the cold weather. I asked Josh, about Baker's comments, and he said he's the type of guy that plays golf with 2 gloves. I'll ask you that first as a golf statement. I mean, I think he was joking. I don't think Baker plays with 2 golf gloves, but that's not something you can come back from, right? And because you are an avid golfer, for those that don't know, and I think most people do, you can't come back from wearing 2 golf gloves.
No, it's got to be pouring down rain, and they got to be actual rain gloves in that situation. That, or you're playing in the freezing cold maybe, and you got 2 gloves on. But what a diss to bring out in that moment. It's like all he had to do is make a short joke about Baker, and it's done. Instead, he goes with a golf reference about wearing 2 gloves. It's a pretty classic Josh Allen move right there. But Baker Mayfield, we're playing against him this week, obviously root against him, but there's just something in me that roots for him on a week-to-week basis, just how he came in the league, the criticism he got in Cleveland, and he was doing commercials, and everyone said, why is he on commercials? He stinks, this and that. I'm like, man, he throws a really good football. He's got some moxie. Anybody I've ever known that has played with him loves him, respects him. I'm like, I don't know. I think he could be a dude in this league if he gets in the right system, gets the right chance. And so to me, I like guys that have a story like that. Just, you get a guy that just gets completely crapped on early in his career. Everyone's ready to write him off. He goes to Carolina, can't even hardly get on the field in Carolina, doesn't really get an opportunity. And now really making a name for himself with the Bucs. It truly, I feel like he could spin it as good as anybody in the NFL. He's been dealing with an oblique injury, which has limited his mobility a little bit. He's kind of a sitting duck in the pocket right now, but that guy could spin it.
Yeah, you said it right there. You thought that he could be the dude, and he just is. I think one of the reasons he's easy to root for is because he plays with the attitude that he's the same size as Josh Allen, right?
Right.
Meanwhile, you look at him and you're like, you don't look that much different than I do, like size-wise. You
Right.
just don't. And meanwhile, he's out there like he will try to truck. I promise you, Bills fans, if he's in the open field and gets a chance to try to run over a defensive back, he's going to try to. I mean, and I think that's why he's so kind of easy to root for. When you look at this Buccaneers team, what is the aspect of them that maybe worries you the most?
To me, it would be, blitz is affecting us again, or the simulated pressures where they drop out and has created confusion this year. I mean, you look at the Atlanta game and we were all out of sorts. Now, the way you combat that is you're productive on first and second down. And, whether that's running the football, whether that's, taking easy throws to be able to just, stay in a proper down and distance where it's not 3rd and 7 plus. We'll see if God's limited. I don't know how Buka could certainly make plays for them on the outside. Tez Johnson, who we saw in the preseason, who lit us up for a couple scores, he had 2 touchdowns last week against the Patriots. He hasn't made a full name for himself this season, but there's been times when I've looked at the fantasy waiver wire and thought, man, if there's enough injuries, I saw that dude in the preseason, and there's some bias just when you watch a preseason game and you see it, but they have some explosiveness on the offensive side of the football.
Last one for you, Ian. I'm going to let you go. Brian Daboll, who I think everybody's a fan of. Look, if you've ever had a chance, anybody out there, to meet Brian Daboll, you probably enjoyed your time around Brian. Obviously, loses his head coaching job with the Giants, and immediately, of course, the fan base goes, they got to go. He's the answer. He can unlock the offense. It's not going to happen. I just don't think that there's any world that we can live in where in the middle of the season you can just flip-flop offensive coordinators. It just doesn't work. That just doesn't work that way. But with that being said, could you ever see down the road at some point Brian Daboll back on the Bills coaching staff? Maybe, like I said, probably not in 2025. I would say the chances are very slim, but down the road.
Potentially, and I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, this organization has been very consistent and very successful over these last 6 seasons, and Brian Daboll was a part of 4 of those years, 3 years of those years. And so when you think about what he did for Josh's relationship with Brian Daboll, if Joe Brady goes and takes a head coaching job, potentially. Now, I don't know if there was spats between McDermott and Daboll at the end, and you had that awkward post-game exchange against the Giants where, who knows what the inner workings are there. But yeah, I've been asked a bunch about, whether we bring Daboll in, will he come in as a senior offensive analyst for the rest of the season? Yeah, to me, the more smart people you can ever have in a room, the better. But if there's too many alphas, that's not a good situation. And it probably brings, just too much scrutiny, with it, where it's every week. Well, the offense only scored 30. What if Daboll was calling plays? Because we've got 40. So I don't see it, obviously, like you do for this season. Down the road, I definitely wouldn't rule it out.
It would be an interesting dynamic. And let's face it, I'll say it because I don't think you're in the position to say it. At the end of the day, Josh Allen would have a big say, a big part of that decision if the Bills decided to go back that route and go to Brian Daboll. I mean, at the end of the day, he is the MVP.
I could say it too. I mean, Josh Allen is your most valuable asset in the organization. I mean, if he doesn't have a say in play calling, in offensive coordinator, in weapons he wants to throw to, O-lineman he loves, I mean, this team revolves around Josh Allen being successful. And Josh is also a football junkie to where, he knows his stuff for the most part. And so, yeah, I mean, he's 100% should have say. I mean, I heard him asked about the trade deadline and whether he had any say there. That's probably not an appropriate time, but when it comes to draft, free agency, coaching changes, he 100% should, and I would assume has a say.
All right, we'll see if Josh Allen and Joe Brady can get the offense back on track against the Buccaneers. 1 o'clock, Highmark Stadium. For Eric Wood, I'm Josh Reed. Thanks for listening and watching Center Stage.
good.